Do you know what GATT 24 is?
Well, GATT 24, of course, is part of the global trade talks, which put forward the parameters of how countries trade with one another, and it's all part of the WTO trading system. And of course, we will have to fit into that as an independent sovereign nation. I don't know, to be honest with you, what all the technical aspects will be of our new potential trading agreement with the European Union. And it's absolutely right that Boris Johnson is scrutinised on this.
Yes, because the reason I asked the question, so I'll just give the definition if I may. It's the 24th article of the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, looking at what happens while a free trade deal is being negotiated. Some Brexiteers seem to argue, including Boris Johnson, it seemed, very fleetingly, but it's important to scrutinise, as you say, that it means tariffs can be kept at zero. The trouble is, the majority of experts disagree. The key point that you need a trade agreement in place in order to make use of GATT 24, which is what Boris Johnson gave as his sole answer as to how we'll get through that period. And in the aftermath of a no-deal Brexit, the EU would be under no obligation to agree anything with the UK. So the key point that Boris Johnson has made publicly about his policy on Brexit has been rounded on not just by trade experts, not just by the Governor of the Bank of England, but also by Liam Fox, our current Trade Secretary.
Look, this will all be part, clearly, of if Mr. Johnson becomes Prime Minister, he will go straight back to the European Union and he will attempt to negotiate something which is acceptable to both sides. However, the most important thing to remember is that the previous agreement, which was agreed between Theresa May and the European Union, simply won't fly. It won't get through the House of Commons.
I'm asking you, are you not, of course, and we do know that, and it's fair to make that point in the sense of, but does that, but does that not,
the whole process.
Does that not worry you that in the event of no deal, the front contender to become Prime Minister mumbled something about GATT 24, which all of us then had to look up and get familiar with, all of us who care enough to try and scrutinise, certainly, or understand, and it's not true. It's simply not true, according to, I could quote you many people here. David Hennig, the director of UK Trade Policy Project at the European Centre for International Political Economy think tank, has dismissed his Johnson's assertion as simply wrong. Is that not concerning to you as a Brexiteer who is passionate about leaving on time and doing so, if needs be, with no deal?
Well, I could quote you other eminent, very respectable figures like the former Governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King, who believes that the best option for the United Kingdom is a managed no-deal process.
No, I'm not debating whether it's no deal or not. I'm debating that the key detail Boris Johnson gave about the GATT 24 rule is wrong.
Well, all of these, if Mr. Johnson puts forward these proposals, they are going to be scrutinised with a fine-tooth comb over the next 16 public debates that are going to ensue between him and Mr. Hunt. Luckily, we are going to have a proper debate on this issue, unlike last time when there was a coronation of the Prime Minister and there was no debate. That's one of the reasons we got into the mess that we're in at the moment.
But could you just answer the question? I accept that point as well, but could you just answer the question? Does it not worry you that Mr. Johnson has misunderstood a key aspect of policy?
I don't think he has misunderstood it, and we will have to assess whether or not.
How has he not misunderstood it?
The technical aspects of what he is proposing. He has done that in conjunction with his advisors. He believes that this is a proper and sensible way to negotiate with the European Union, and we will have to wait and see if an accommodation can be made.
I've just put it to you and explained, I hope in the best terms I could, what this GATT 24 is. And even those who have been generous to Boris Johnson, like Liam Fox, who was out this weekend on the Andrew Marr programme saying we shouldn't be looking into his personal life, we shouldn't be judging him on all those sorts of things, being very generous to Mr. Johnson as a potential Prime Minister candidate and as someone himself who's a Brexiteer. But he's wrong about GATT 24. It's a total misunderstanding of how we can leave on no deal. I just put it to you that you're supporting a man who has been factually inaccurate already about the terms of a no deal. I'm not even talking about what was going on in his flat with his girlfriend. I'm talking about his Brexit policy.
His Brexit policy is going to be scrutinised, as I've said to you, with a fine-tooth comb by the media, by people like you.
Yes, so I've done it, and I'm putting it to you that he's incorrect. And how does that make you feel?
Well, I don't believe he is incorrect. I believe he is correct.
Well, because you don't believe facts.
Well, look, I think he is correct, and I will be tabling some written parliamentary questions this week on the GATT process.
So, sorry, I have it on the record from that you believe that the way that Boris Johnson has described we can use GATT 24 in the event of no deal is correct. That's how you think it is correct at the moment?
Yes, I do.
Right. Can we talk about the deadline? Because
Yes.
Boris Johnson, there was concerns that, I know you're no longer a member of the European Research Group, is that correct?
Correct.
Just wanted to check that was still the case. I didn't know if you'd had a reconciliation since we last spoke. There was concerns that members of the European Research Group would have been concerned by him not raising his hand on that debate the other day, saying he would absolutely guarantee that we would leave on October the 31st. He in fact said it was eminently feasible. And in the hustings since, hosted by Ian Dale in front of Conservative members, he still failed to say 100% we will be leaving on October the 31st. Are you concerned by that?
Well, I think the most damaging aspect of this whole process has been that the current Prime Minister promised on over 120 occasions on the floor of the House of Commons that we will be leaving at the end of March. That didn't happen, and that actually did cause a huge amount of concern amongst my constituents and throughout the members of the public throughout the United Kingdom. It's vital that we pull out at the end of October. This whole process has been very humiliating for us as a country. The divisions that are so clearly apparent within our country have prevented us from leaving the European Union and fulfilling what the British people voted for. This Remain a Parliament.
So exactly because of what you've just said, wouldn't it be essential for Boris Johnson to make that commitment?
And he has. He's repeatedly made the commitment that to us as members of Parliament, and I think on the record publicly, that he has every intention to ensure that if he's Prime Minister, we will be pulling out of the European Union on the 31st of October. And
he has every intention to assure, but he hasn't done so yet. You said it's important for Mr. Johnson to be scrutinised, but then he avoids giving direct answers when scrutinised.
I have every confidence in him fulfilling that commitment to pull us out of the European Union on the 31st. And I have to say to you, if this Remain a Parliament, this overwhelmingly Remain a Parliament that has blocked every possible progress to us leaving the European Union over the last 6 to 12 months.
Yes, including Boris Johnson.
Then we will have to go for a general election, and we will have to put it to the people, because that's what really excites me, quite frankly. The prospect, this gridlock, this paralysis, this chaos, which has been unprecedented in my 14 years as a Member of Parliament, could potentially be resolved by the people. We will go for a managed no deal, and if this Parliament tries to bring him down and tries to bring this government down, we will say fine.
So what?
Dissolution of Parliament, and the people will decide.
That's how you see this potentially playing out. But just a very simple question. You say you have every confidence he can do it. I just would like to understand, and many other people getting in touch who are texting, I wanted to read you a couple of texts, if I may, from our listeners, are saying, why can't you just say it then, black and white?
Well, I think he has said, I intend to pull the United Kingdom out of the European Union on the 31st of October. Yeah, in hustings in front of us in the House of Commons, that he will be making that message over and over again, I presume, in public hustings, but in the hustings that he's had with parliamentarians like myself, when he's been challenged on that point, he has said over and over again, we will be pulling out of the European Union on the 31st of October. And
why did he not then say it publicly? It's one thing to say it to MPs. I recognise that's who he's courting at the moment, but he got the MPs behind him. There is a concern he's saying one thing to one group and watering it down to another group, because he, like Jeremy Hunt, would like a few more days if there is a deal in sight, and he doesn't want to be able to be that person at this point that says, again, I'll miss a deadline.
Well, we have massively impeded our negotiations hitherto by Parliament publicly demanding that no deal is taken off the table, which has massively weakened our negotiating hand with the European Union. Clearly, any new Prime Minister will want to keep some things in reserve and will want to keep some of the cards close to his chest. He's not going to reveal necessarily all of his negotiating tactics with the European Union on live television in the United Kingdom, because, of course, the European Union, as you know, is monitoring every single word that is said here in the United Kingdom and will be adjusting and recalibrating its own negotiating position based on what the British Prime Minister is saying to the British electorate through the British media.
I've just got a message in here. What's been interesting about our exchange here is I haven't heard Boris Johnson say unequivocally we will 100% leave on October 31st in any of the things that I have been able to watch him or listen to him do. Many listeners are saying the same. You're saying something different. I heard him talk about GATT 24 very clearly as what would happen if in the event of no deal. And listeners have been able to already get in touch and say that people like Mark Carney have said clearly GATT 24 applies if you have an agreement, not if you've decided not to have an agreement or been able to come to an agreement. And a message just come in saying, Emma, many of us on Twitter already knew about GATT 24, as many trade experts on Twitter freely advised to clarify for the layperson. How MPs who have access to world-class research still get this wrong is testament of their inability to think critically. Brexit is blinding MPs to their own incompetence, because you have said now on the record you believe what he has said about GATT 24 is correct. So we seem to be at odds about facts.
The top expert, if you are really interested in getting to
Yes.
grips with this GATT issue, the top expert that I've come across in the House of Commons is Peter Lilley, Lord Lilley, who was actually involved in the GATT talks at an early stage. And he has written many papers on this whole process. So if I were you, I would ask Peter Lilley, Lord Peter Lilley.
Yes, I've had Lord Lilley on the programme a lot. The other day he was only saying it was a conspiracy theory about something that was leaked to the Financial Times about the Brexit secretary signing off on the fact that we weren't ready for a no deal. So we couldn't actually get into the detail because he was saying something was a conspiracy theory. But yes, I'll invite Lord Lilley back on and we'll talk more.
Did you ask Lord Lilley about the GATT?
Oh, well, Boris Johnson hadn't mentioned GATT 24 by that point, so I didn't know it was Mr Johnson's policy. But I will invite Mr Lilley, or Lord Lilley rather, back on and we'll have that conversation. Thank you very much, Daniel Kawczynski, for your time this morning. Conservative MP and supporter of Boris Johnson there.